Welcome to the Michael Blum Show, where we talk about things you don't want to talk about. We talk about sex. We talk about politics. We talk spirituality and substance abuse. Join us by calling 800-699-0980. Think, speak, and be heard. Here now is Michael Blum.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Michael Blum Show. I'm excited tonight, and I got to tell you why. I'm excited tonight because I'm trying out some new technology. If I sound like I'm stuttering, it's just that there's a very, very fine delay in the microphone, and I'll figure that out, but we'll be good. We'll be good. I want to welcome you to the Michael Blum Show, and I had to go through, I guess, some of the paperwork. I think that's what you'd call it. People have asked me in the past, how do you hear this show? Well, first of all, the Michael Blum Show is broadcasting every Tuesday evening from 8 to 10 p.m. And you can hear us best way would be to go to my website, michaelblumshow.com. And you'll see on the top that there are different tabs. You go to the one that says Listen Now, and you can pick your stream. It's either from Facebook or from Twitter, Periscope. The actual URLs, if you want, I can tell you them. They are facebook.com/Blum Show, BLUMSHOW. The other one's a little bit more complicated. It's Periscope, but it's PSCP for Periscope, PSCP.TV/Michael Blum Show. That's why I recommend people, if you really want to hear, you go ahead and you listen to us through the website, michaelblumshow.com. I think I've said Michael Blum Show more in the last like 30 seconds than I have in my whole life. But anyway, people ask me, and I got to let you know, that's what we're doing. We're trying a completely digital setup tonight, something I've never done, and I'm sure things will need to be tweaked. I do intend still to take phone calls. The call-in number is going to be 800-699-0980. Again, 800-699-0980. We have a really good topic for tonight, and the topic actually is media bias. I had a guy on my show, I don't remember the name, but this is a good few years ago, way before Trump, and he said there was absolutely no media bias, nothing at all, and I thought that was kind of odd, because I've always felt that there has been media bias. There's even been media bias from before we got Trump into office. And when I say we, I mean the people, okay? It bothers me because every single time you hear someone talk about hating Trump, what they really mean is they hate you. That's what they mean. That's why you're irredeemable and deplorable. We're actually a basket of deplorables, if you remember. That's why they're not in office. They think it has to do with the Russians. Of course, when the Russians were doing this, Obama was the president and did nothing about it, those horrible Russians. But I understand Mueller now has Natasha Nogudnik and Boris Badenov also helping him on his witch hunt. And that should be interesting to see how that goes out. I know Rocky J. Squirrel and Bullwinkle J. Moose are both very, very active in all of that reporting. So we can talk about some media bias. We do have an expert in that who's going to be coming on the show in a few minutes. I also was just curious, if you want to call me up today, again, the number is 800-699-0980. It would be great if you can give me what you think the new slogans for the Democrats should be coming up in these new midterm elections in November. I think that they actually should make hats like Trump, because you see what's happened is the media got together this week and decided they will not say the word impeachment, because now rather than a bunch of freaked out lunatics from the left, which is basically what the ruling elitists in the Democrat Party are right now, rather than go ahead and do that, I think they're going to start to develop things that are similar to Trump. So they don't want to say impeachment anymore, because you see, that's not serious. That's not serious. That doesn't have anything to do with values, doesn't have to do anything to do with what they really truly believe, which, if you really knew, would scare the crap out of you. So I think they should have hats just like Trump, and on it maybe different letters. I thought of maybe MAFA, for Make America Fail Again. I thought that might be a very good way of going ahead and doing it. I know that the New York Times also recently changed their logo from all the news that's fit to print to all the shit that's unfit to print. And so I do believe in media bias. And what would say it better than, this is how it starts. You know, this is a news clip. It's a little bit of a montage. I don't know if I'll play the whole thing, but I'll play a little bit of it. And this is going to show you what Trump was up against beforehand. I mean, before he ever became elected. Check it out.
Trump. Just last week, he confirmed to the National Review that he is again considering a run in 2016.
Do it. Do it. Look at me. Do it. I will personally write you a campaign check now on behalf of this country, which does not want you to be president, but which badly wants you to run.
Which Republican candidate has the best chance of winning the general election?
Of the declared ones right now, Donald Trump.
President Obama will go down as perhaps the worst president in the history of the United States! Exclamation point at real Donald Trump. Well, at real Donald Trump, at least I will go down as a president.
So right now we have Hillary's about a 75 or an 80% favorite. We have different versions of the forecast you can look at.
The poll has Hillary Clinton up by double digits nationally, 12 points, 50 to 38, a four-way race.
Clinton leading in Florida, Clinton leading in North Carolina, Clinton leading in Ohio, Clinton leading in Nevada. I could go on and on and on.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
And so, right now, Mr. Trump, to answer your call for political honesty, I just want to say, you're not going to be president, all right? It's been fun. It's been great. I love you. But come on, buddy.
We have a major projection right now. Donald Trump will take Ohio. And CNN projects Donald Trump will carry the state of Florida. Huge win for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, we project, will win in Kentucky, in Indiana, with its 11 electoral votes. West Virginia, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Mississippi, South Carolina, Alabama, North Dakota, with its 3 electoral votes, and South Dakota, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana.
Well, I think you all have the idea. So how can there not be media bias if this is what media says about our president before he's elected? I mean, really, how can that be? You just go, okay, well, never mind. I'll close that box off, and I'll open up a different one where we just blame the Russians, and there's hatred for all involved with Donald Trump, you deplorables. So, of course, there's bias. There's a ton of bias going out there, and I think it's becoming evident and obvious. And I got someone who we're going to be doing some video conferencing with, I think, who will have the answers to that. So we're going to welcome to the Michael Blum Show, John Daly. John Daly is an author. We should let you know about that. He does have 2 books out right now. One is called Not Informed, Not Inflamed. He also has another book, which is a guide to navigating a media-biased world. So I do want to welcome to the Michael Blum Show, John Daly.
The state of Montana.
Whoops, let's not do that. Let's do this instead. I think this will work better. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Michael. How you doing?
Okay. How do things sound on your end?
Actually, they sound really good. The clip you played, I heard perfectly, and I heard everything you did, and I can see you, and hopefully you can see me okay.
I can see you beautifully. Nice looking guy. Great. My God, look at me. This is what happens when you get old. Your face starts to slump. Gravity takes its toll, and jowls start to fall, and all this. There's some benefits to it, if you know what I mean, but that's not that important. So anyway, I want to welcome you here. Now, folks, I also want you to know that John, not only is he an author, he's a co-host and producer of Undercover Jet Setter, which is something we'll talk about also, which is travel and food and wine, which I thoroughly enjoy all of. So it's one of my favorite things. I have grandchildren, so most of my travel, John, becomes me going out to LA to visit the kiddies, but that's great. There are some television shows also that you can pick up on YouTube /Undercover Jet Setter. And not in the least, but to top it off, he's also a host of a radio show that's based on Jet Setter, Undercover Jet Setter. So tell me about what you've done or how you've proceeded in terms of researching and getting the information that you have about media bias.
Well, I've been doing this for, I would say, at least, my first book was written in 2004, came out in early 2005 after the Bush-Kerry election. And primarily I was diving into things, and I had a lot of friends who were asking me different things about the race, and they kept sending me stuff. And I said, well, go look at this site. Here, look at this, then look at this, look at this. And finally, one of them, his name is Brian Cranston, and at the time he was not Walter White, but he said to me, he goes, why don't you write a book on this? And I said, you're right. So I wrote a how-to book on how to be more informed in a media bias world. It's a no BS guide to navigating a media bias world. So Inform, Not Inflame, which you mentioned before, is in its writing, which will start coming out hopefully soon, and it would be more up to date of what's going on using Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. So primarily what I do is and to simplify it, I try to give people a system so that they can navigate the media, and they can do it in 20 minutes. They can be more informed than if they watch 4 hours of cable news. The main goal is to make sure that you don't lose any friends or family over political fights, and that you become a little bit more aware of other sides as well. And it's really simple. And the big thing I try to point out is that the biggest bias we have is a sports and entertainment bias. Yes, there's left and right bias, but if you look at the sports and entertainment bias, the news media turns every single story into a sporting event. It's one side against the other, or it's the protagonist against the antagonist, the drama. And as a result of that, we don't tackle issues. We don't really get to our issue. I'll give you a great example. Happened to flip on MSNBC and Morning Joe the other day, and they had on, I think it's Daniel O'Connor, who was the congressman, or he was running for Congress in a special election in Ohio. And so they brought him on and talking about the exact same thing you were just talking about before. They said, well, are you going to talk about the I word? Or you're not going to follow the I word? You're not going to talk about impeachment? He goes, no, I'm not. I'm going to talk about the issues of the constituents. He's got to run again in another election in November. And so he said, I'm going to talk about the issues that are important. And the issues that are important to my constituents are saving Social Security and saving Medicare. And the next question came out was, are you going to vote for Nancy Pelosi? And I was like, wait a minute, this guy just said he's going to save Social Security and Medicare. I'd like to find out how he's going to do it, because that's an issue in 5 to 10 years that could actually swamp our economy here.
It's funny.
No one's paying attention to it.
People talk about entitlements all the time. And to me, the only really entitlements that exist is Medicare and Social Security, because you paid into that system and you really should get your money back. All the other things, the welfare and food stamps, those are different types of entitlement, because that is not funded by the people putting in.
I would agree with you. The only thing I would say about Medicare is that the average recipient, and this is statistics and this is facts that are out there, the average recipient will they've only paid in 1/3 to about 50% of what they're going to use over a lifetime. That means 50% of the rest of whatever you have to pay for is going to be paid by taxpayers. So taxpayers in the future are paying our Medicare bills. And It might run out by 2027 is one of the things that they're saying. And if that's true, that could be, Medicare could be the biggest thing in our budget. It could dwarf what the defense budget's going to be, because we got to pay for that.
Yeah, I think you do have to pay for it. And there has to be a way. I wasn't aware of the fact that that actually you're going to use a hell of a lot more of the benefit than you put in. That's kind of new to me, but
we're living
if that's
older.
the case. That's the case.
But we're living to an older age, and we're going to have more complications as we stay alive, and so that's going to be more medical bills, and our medical costs are continuing to go through the roof. So they're not dropping at all, even though Medicare obviously has a different pricing system. But still, that pricing is going to go up as well.
Do you think if we got rid of most of the other entitlements, we'd have enough for Medicare? Or is Medicare just really unbelievably large?
Yeah, it is, and it's about ready to explode, and it's exploding because people like me, the baby boomers, are about ready to retire. So we're not contributing back to the economy. We're taking, and unfortunately, like what you said, most of us think, hey, we're entitled to that, and we are entitled to a good part of it, but we're not entitled to probably, for many of us, 50 to 66% of what we're going to use.
Even if I, rather than give the government my money when I was working, if I took that money instead and invested it, I may not be in that same kind of percentage category.
A good possibility. Yeah. It just depends if you know how to invest. I mean, that's the other problem.
That's it. Obviously, the government doesn't do a good job at it. Or much of a good job at anything.
No. We're just we're kind of paying it forward. So we're allowing we're allowing younger people to have to fund our future that we didn't pay for. And so you've got an aging problem here in the United States. The second problem is that technology is not necessarily creating a lot more jobs. And whatever jobs it's creating, it's not creating great salaries. So we're asking these younger people to have to pay for our Medicare when they're not going to have the adequacy of as many jobs, or the jobs we had certainly back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Now, when you look at budgets, federal budgets, some of the things that they spend money on, it's in a huge amount of money.
Absolutely.
Someone has to get in there and do the right thing and kind of chop that all up.
Well, they do, and they probably need to raise taxes on the wealthiest. I think what Trump did by lowering the business taxes was a great idea. I'd like to see him raise the taxes on the wealthier, but give them tax incentives so they can invest in new businesses, so we can create new jobs, we can create new, newer technologies. What we need Ronald Reagan again, so that we can get, the next Steve Jobs and the next Bill Gates. I mean, that's what we need. What happened in the 80s. What's happening now is we're just giving money to a lot of wealthy people, which is fine because a lot of them are retiring. But I'd love to see them have an incentive to boost the economy and make even more money and reduce their taxes.
Well, from your mouth, as they say, to God's ears. So, well, you know what it's like, because we talked beforehand about having elderly parents and having to take care of them and the health issues and all of that. And folks, give us a call if you'd like. Again, the number is 800-699-0980. I'm going to check that technology out. I'm not sure if it'll work, but, maybe you'll be the first. You can go ahead. We'll get this honed down.
Cool. I think this is great, by the way. I think it's really neat that you're going to be on different platforms, and you're going to be reaching a lot more people outside of your area too.
Yeah, I had to explain to someone how this really all works, because people are usually very, very used to like terrestrial radio broadcasting. And that's, you have your station, you broadcast, you're on a show, and people don't realize that younger people don't want to do that. They want to listen to the show, get the entertainment when they want to get the entertainment. They don't want to go ahead and have to go to a radio at 8 p.m. and do things. And so sometimes I'll have people come on the show. They say, well, it looks like only 10, 20 people listen to this. I said, yeah, but after a month, 300 people listen to it. But they're doing it at their own pace. They're downloading it when they want to download it, and it's a completely different thing. So I'm very, very happy with the technology. I'm trying to get my computer to do everything. And I want to thank you for doing this with me, because you're kind of like a little bit of an experiment, but this looks great. This looks great. The only issue I'm having is I have literally a millisecond delay in the headphone, and that makes me sometimes talk like there's a problem. But But that's about it. I'll figure that out too.
Well, we should tell folks too that when you and I tested this a couple of days ago, I was having the problem with the feedback, and you actually corrected it for me, and then you created the problem for yourself.
Yes, and that's something. I don't know how it happened because 2 days ago it wasn't happening, but I'll figure it out. What can I say? In the media recently, I'm just curious what your opinion is of all this. You're familiar with Candace Owens? She's a black conservative commentator. And there's this woman whose name is Sarah Jung. And Sarah's nuts. That's the only way I can put it. I mean, racist and horrific. And she is the tech editor for the New York Times. New York Times recently hired her. So, when the Times hires people, they go back and they look and say, well, what has she posted? And stuff like that. Now, what's interesting about this is that that Miss Owens, who I really, really like, Candace Owens, actually took her Twitter tweets and changed a couple of words on it, and Twitter suspended her account. And it's the exact same thing that
Candace changed her own Twitter.
Right. She went on to her. Let me give you an example here.
Because I believe I interviewed Candace at the CPAC convention.
That could be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She was delightful, by the way.
Oh, yeah? I like her very much. I think she could be a very good candidate. People would be scared of her. She knows what she's talking about. She's black. She's a woman. And she's conservative. That's kind of like what the liberal left really hates to see. But this is what she wrote, Candace Owens, on her Twitter account. Jewish people are bullshit, like dogs pissing on fire hydrants. Are Jewish people genetically disposed to burn faster in the sun? And of course, her account was suspended for that. However, she just changed the word white people to Jewish and used the exact same things that Sarah Jung said, actually. She said, I'll give you some of her stuff. Oh man, it's kind of sick. How much joy I get out of being cruel to old white men. I open my mouth to politely greet a Republican, but nothing but an unending cascade of vomit flows from my face. Are white people genetically predisposed to burn faster in the sun? This logically being only fit to live underground like groveling goblins. So this beauty now is an editor for the New York Times. Now, is the Times biased?
Well, the Times does. Everybody has bias. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But again, it goes back to my other bias is that it's all about entertainment, and all they're trying to do is just create a form of drama, of conflict, because that's what draws people to watch. And unfortunately, we all get drawn in by it. We are a nation addicted to entertainment, and so these media companies are going to keep doing it. Why? Because it makes them money.
Sure.
This controversy makes them money. And
it's like listening to gossip rags rather than the news anymore. It's really, it's ridiculous.
Well, and for instance, I mean, one of the things that I tell people, especially in the book, is, if you see something online, you don't need to respond to it. I mean, let it go. Let it go. I mean, for the most part, when I post a lot of news stories that I think are at least have problem solutions to them, or that really have an economic bent to them, so it kind of gives people an idea. I don't ever put comments on there. And I have a lot of people saying, I can't believe you posted that. Why are you posting it? And the goofy thing is I get people on the right who think I'm a socialist, and I got people on the left who think I'm, an alt-right fascist. So, but I don't comment on things. I just post stories for the most part. I might give an insight into something, I met this person, here was my experience with it, or something like that. But the problem we have is we have too many people out there who are offering their opinions, and they don't have a lot of information behind it. They just have a lot of emotion. And it works for great drama, but it's not necessarily great news, or it doesn't help. It doesn't help the debate on most of the important issues that are facing us.
I heard Denzel Washington talk, And he basically said that if you don't listen to the news, then you're not informed. And if you listen to the news, then you're misinformed. And that was kind of his breakdown of what's actually happening out there.
Well, and and there's a lot of truth to that. And the reason why you're misinformed is because probably most people they go into an area of comfort. So I always tell people, if you're conservative, Fox News is the last place you should be watching. I mean, you should be watching MSNBC or CNN. If you're liberal, you should be watching Fox News. You need to know what the other side's saying. I had a couple of guys who were deep in intelligence who actually looked at my book, the first book I wrote. And one of the things they said was, you need to tell people to read the fringe. Read the fringe people. They might not have all the truth, but they'll give you an idea what the fringe is thinking about. And you need to know what the fringe is thinking about. And if you start seeing what the other side is saying, if you're that worried about watching them, then you're not very strong in your own beliefs. Yet at the same time, too, your beliefs will get stronger if you understand where the other side's coming from. Or you might open your eyes up and actually hear somebody else say something that might make sense.
I find that it's difficult to talk to people that are liberals and or on the left, because a lot of what they say, it's weird. What I found, it depends really where they live too. But if they're like from New York or LA or Jersey, they're not used to talking to anybody about anything other than Trump hatred. I mean, that's the basis. Mm-hmm. The thing that tunes me out is that maybe it'll change now because you're going to get very close to the midterm elections. But basically, the liberal opinion is, I hate Trump, period. I hate Trump. And they do that in 10,000 forms. I hate Trump. He's a bad man. He's ill-mannered, this and that.
Well, and there's a lot of truth to that. There's and there is, I believe there's a crisis on the left and there's a crisis on the right, as far as, especially within the two political parties, that they really can't get together. And we don't have any cohesion here. I mean, I'm not going to say we're in a crisis, but we're dealing with a lot of conflicts that are kind of overlaying each other, and we can't figure out where they are. I mean, one of the things I thought was fascinating was that there were so many Bernie supporters who were actually, it turned out to be Trump supporters, or who just hated Hillary so much that they voted for Trump, and they were okay with that. So we've got so many conflicts going on here now because the world is changing so drastically. And add to that, I mean, one of the things that I see the whole thing that's causing it is shale oil. We're almost energy independent now, and we weren't 10, 12 years ago. And that's allowed us to become a little bit more isolationist, because we don't need energy from other people. We're actually selling energy. And I think when you combine that with their kind of a nationalistic fervor, I think that there is a control of a lot of the older people, the baby boomers. And I think they're going to start losing control because they're going to start dying off. And according to the demographics, from what I can tell, 2018, this could be a shift in year. 2020 could be a really big shift in year, where the millennials and Generation Z are bigger in numbers. Whether they come out to vote or not is a different thing. But we're going through 1968. That's what it reminds me of.
In what way?
It's just the upheaval. We don't trust our institutions. 1968 was a lot more violent. And I think there was even a lot more vitriol, even though you're seeing it today. And again, it wasn't until 73 Watergate, so I'm not comparing Watergate at all to that, because that wasn't even around. But we had a time in 1968 when we realized that our government had lied to us, and that we were losing young people in the Vietnam War because our government had lied to us. And it was the first time we were like, I don't trust them. And if you go back since that time, nobody, Republicans and Democrats, don't trust the government. And it reminds me a lot. Again, I was 12 years old at the time, so take that with a grain of salt. But I do remember 1968, and I do remember how scary it was.
Yeah, I went through that too. I went through all the assassinations in middle school of Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King. I experienced people rioting in the high schools, taking like giant, like those big flags like you'd have in the auditorium, and running down corridors, smashing windows. I remember taking a hammer from my father's toolkit because I didn't feel all that safe walking into the school. So I remember that. The thing is that the media at that time was skeptical of the government too.
Well, they were starting to be, but at the same time too, the media was 3 outlets, and then it was, 4 or 5 newspapers that you would read, or if you got your local newspaper, you got the feeds from AP, Washington Post, or the New York Times, and it was there really wasn't a lot of media around, whereas today, I mean, the media is just, it's all over the place. Information's all over the place. And we're getting a lot of information from our friends. We're getting a lot of information from our followers on Facebook. And, you don't know how true it is. You don't know if it's been filtered. And so we've got so much coming at us now. So I think all that bombardment of news and information now, which is so much compared to before, is that I think it's one reason why we don't have a lot of violence and we don't have as much outward vitriol, because people are getting angry at each other on Facebook. They're getting angry at them on Twitter. They're yelling at them that way. They're not confronting them in person. Well,
that's a good thing, I guess, right? You don't want to be confronted. Yeah. Unless, of course, you're Maxine Waters, and then it's okay to confront certain people. However, when she was confronted by a guy who was doing the same thing she said, "You have to see me in my office." So you see, she can't be confronted. I don't know if you can tell. I don't trust government all that much. I don't know if that comes through to you.
But, no, I couldn't tell at all. I thought you were more of a flag waver more than anything else. So.
Well, no, I'm not a flag waver. I used to be a Democrat, shockingly enough. The last Democrat I voted for was Jimmy Carter.
Wow.
And so that was a long time ago. And that was right after Nixon. I think, like many people who think like me, is that, I don't mind change. I don't care if things change. I expect things to change, and things should change. But what I don't like is the fact that this change actually is to change the fundamental concepts of what the United States is. And,
like what?
Wow. Well, I think that if the left was completely honest, their platform would be, we want to raise all of your taxes. We don't think you should really have the money because you're too stupid to know how to use it. And we elitists who are so brilliant and have gone to all of these Ivy League places, we know way better than you what you should be doing with your money. So we should take your taxes. Also, I believe that everyone here is a citizen of the world. There is no such thing as a country. Despite the fact that I may put up a border around my house to protect myself, that doesn't mean I should do something similar to protect my country. We're just citizens of the world, and this place should be opened up to anyone and everybody who wants to come in. I think multiculturalism is moronic. Okay, multi-ethnic is what I grew up with. You had a lot of peoples with different ethnic backgrounds, but everyone had an American culture. And everyone, that's the only thing that binds people that are so different from each other, is to have some common bond. That's what it is to be an American. And you can symbolize that in a flag, you can symbolize that in a song, and I'm not talking about giving your life up for your country here. I'm talking about a very, very simple way. There must be an American culture, or America doesn't exist. There has to be a border, or you have no country. You either believe that this is a sovereign state and we have the right to protect it, or you don't. And I think the leftist viewpoint is just, at this point, is so harsh. You're going to have to wait for that generation to come in, because they'll want to be taken care of, and they're used to laying in mommy's basement, and they've had their adolescence stretched out to now to 30, 40. College now is the new reality. It's not something you leave to experience the new reality. So I've ranted and raved about that. I don't even know where the hell I started. But but basically, that's what I think that's going on with the left. And I think that's a very difficult thing for them to, at this point, to outright come out and say. You have a few people that do, like Bernie Sanders and what's her name, Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah. And they say, I'm a socialist. Of course, she doesn't know what that means, but because people have asked her.
I don't think anybody knows what it means.
Well, you can have some concept. I mean, basic socialism was supposed to be that the major things that are important to all people that are basically quote unquote rights as we see it should be handled by the government, but private sectors do the actual work. So it's getting the private sectors of certain medicine, to work and do all the work, but the government controls it and controls the money. As compared to communism, where the government just owns everything, and so it's a little bit different. But
or fascism on the other side.
Yeah.
And one of my problems with the, and I agree with you a lot of what you said there. One of my problems with a lot of people who are complaining that socialism is coming back into our country. I think we need a dollop of socialism with our capitalism. I'm not saying we need to go back to the 60s and 70s when we completely got rid of any notion of the individual and the and work and doing it on your own. It became, you saw what happened in the economy of the 60s and the 70s. But I do think that we've gone a little bit too far in the last, I'm going to say last 10 years, where the individual seems to override the common good. And that to me is a great battle that always makes America great, is the individual versus the common good. It's kind of like in a baseball game. It's the individual hitter up against 9 players. And I think lately the individual has been winning dramatically. And I think we've talked a lot about freedom, but we haven't talked about responsibility. I don't think we need to go completely the other way, but I think we need a little bit of, again, just a little bit of what some people would call socialism. And I think we need to help the common good a little bit, because I'm beginning to see, and I think a lot of what you're talking about with
working, the income inequality thing, I don't really completely buy, because there's always income inequality. I mean, for instance, Bill Gates makes a hell of a lot more money than I do. And I don't see why, how me taking money away from him is going to help people who don't have a job or are struggling. I mean, you just want to give it? Is this a Robin Hood thing? You just take from the rich, give it to the poor?
No, I want to give them tax breaks to create new jobs for all these people and stuff like that. That's what I'm looking for, instead of just holding on to it and then putting it into a corporation that's going to stifle technology and cut jobs. I mean, when you look at it that way, I think there's just not a lot of opportunity for younger people to be able to get that job and then have that one job and then live an okay life. One of the things, and this was when I predicted in 2015 that Trump would be definitely the GOP nominee and would either come close to winning or win the presidency. I'm one of the few. I was with Ann Coulter. And one of the things that made me realize it was a great book called The Unwinding. And it was written by George Packer. And one of the things he talked about was that our economy, especially after the financial crisis, and this part of the economy has stayed somewhat true, even though we're creating jobs and the economy is moving along. We used to have a social compact that said, if you worked hard and you didn't break the law and you were a good person, you were guaranteed a roof over your head and beer in your refrigerator. We don't have that compact anymore. It's kind of gone. And it's not that anybody went out to try to change that for themselves, but it's different now. And there's a different America. Whereas, when I was a kid, hey, as long as I went and worked somewhere, I wasn't going to be a millionaire, but I could survive. I could go down to the local pub and get a beer every now and then. I could watch TV. I could be fine. Nowadays, you find, people got to piece together two and three jobs just to kind of get the basics. And so I think there is a shift there. And I think there's something that we're going to have to take a look at. And I have a feeling that these younger generation, these kids, I think possibly in November of this year, but certainly in 2020 and 2024, they're going to change things. And I think you're going to see a little bit more of the fear of socialism coming into the United States.
Personally, I believe in the individual. That's where I really come from. And you're right. A lot of these things do scare me because it's going to be at the tail end of my life. And I'd like to live in the country I was brought up in, not some newly formed kind of, to me, banana republic. But so you're right.
Go to
right.
Malaysia. Malaysia is one of the best places to live. That's where we may have to live because the health care is great and the cost of living is down.
I got to convince my grandchildren to go because that's the only reason I'm here. Malaysia. I've never. Well, you do get a travel guide too. Tell us. Let's go ahead and take a break. Folks, you want to give us a call, feel free to do so. The number again is 800-699-0980. Tell us a little bit about the magazine that you're doing.
It's called Undercover Jet Setter, and it's travel, food, wine, and golf, and we shoot it completely off the iPhone. And it is you can see it on YouTube. You can see about 10 of the episodes. We've done about 60 episodes, so we're just slowly putting the episodes on there so we can get a bigger audience. We just don't want to put them all on there at once. But there's a lot of segments. There's 200 segments on there that we do. So you get a chance to take a look at it. So it's innovative in the fact that it's on the iPhone, and at the same time too, we just my business partner and co-host is Susan Anzalone, and we both love travel. She's an expert on food and wine, and I'm not an expert on golf, but she's not an expert on golf. So I become the expert on golf.
I understand. A default expert. I love traveling. My next big trip is going to be to the Greek Isles, and I'll probably do that on a cruise because I'm a lazy guy and I can just lay around and do whatever I want.
Nothing. Do you know which isles you're going to?
Santorini, a couple of them. I don't remember them offhand. That one I know because that's supposed to be one of the most picturesque places on earth. So I know we're going to go there. It's also listed in one of the 10 top places you should go to before you die. Thankfully, in my life, I've been to a lot of them, other than 2 of them. But Machu Picchu and Paris.
You should go see Mamma Mia, the movie.
Do I have?
Because I think it was shot in Santorini.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's gorgeous. I saw the original one, the first movie, not the new one with Cher. But yeah, beautiful.
Oh, maybe I think it was the original one. I think.
Yeah, I think that's. I kind of remember that as well.
You'll enjoy it there. They don't have. They have a monastery that has Greek white wine, which actually isn't too bad. So if you get a chance to go there, and you can actually tour the monastery in the winemaking there.
That'll be fun. I like doing that. But particularly the wineries. I once got lost. People didn't know where I was. They went back 2 rooms, and I was laying on a table after having my 7th little tiny glass of whatever it was that they were serving up. But I'm not a heavy drinker. I'm more a boozer than a wino. So, but anyway, that's
cool. Well, I'm a graduate of Harvard. You know that, don't you?
No.
I'm a graduate of the Harvard Bartending School.
Oh, okay. So
I can help you there.
Right. So you're a good mixologist, I guess.
Absolutely, I'm the best.
All right, that's awesome. When we get together one day, you'll have to give me a drink.
I promise you I will, and you can actually go on undercoverjetsetter.com. We actually have a mixology page, so it's some of the drinks that we've created there, so you can see that.
Excellent. A professional intoxicologist. I mean, that's very good. That's very good. In preparation for the show, I did a little bit of Google searching, and I was surprised that I'll give you the example. This is the example I used. I did a search for broadcasters spewing hate.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't mention...
God, you didn't find me, did you?
No, I didn't find you. I didn't find many inferences of anyone on the liberal side spewing hate. The first liberal search that came up was on the bottom of the second page. And I said, this is kind of odd. And now, and it's obvious to me, if I go ahead and I search YouTube or Google for information, whatever seems to be on the more conservative side is on the 3rd page, 2nd page, maybe at the end of the 1st page if you're lucky. But the first listings always seem to be from the more liberal side. And it's interesting because I read an article shortly after that said about maybe 43% of people nowadays actually are getting their news from social media. So I was curious if I wanted you to actually comment on that, because social media is kind of a mixed widget. And it's strange to me that so many people are relying on that for their news.
Well, to me, it partially it's a little bit scary because you're getting from people that maybe don't know what they're talking about. One of the things that I talk about in the book is to create your own private news Twitter feed. And what you do is you only follow news organizations that are reputable. You follow news organizations with a wide range of perspective. So if you got the New York Times, you should have the Wall Street Journal. You should have the National Review. You should have Talking Points Memo, which is a left wing, and you balance them, and then you go to them for 20 minutes a day and just go take a look at the different things that they're doing. So you get to see different perspectives on different stories. But as far as if somebody starts posting something on some issue and they're making a point, if they don't have a link on there that backs them up or is somewhat confirmed, I don't pay attention to it. So I expect people, if they're trying to convince me or they're trying to bring across a point, you better come with some ammunition, because I'm going to negate you if you don't.
When I started, I used to listen to a lot of left-wing stuff. And like I said, since the hate and vitriol just continued to grow and grow, I've stopped for the most part. I was curious if you could recommend to me good, viable, liberal news sources that are actually reporting news and not shooting from the hip or trying to sell papers or airtime.
I don't know if I can say that about anybody on the right or the left. I mean, I think they're all out to make a profit. The one magazine that I follow that I like, it has a little bit of a liberal bent, but it has also a business bent, is The Economist out of London. I find that they cover the United States much better than most publications in the United States do. So I'll read them. Another site that I go to quite a bit is called Stratfor, Stratfor. So that means Strategic Foreign Policy. I can't remember. Anyway, it's a geopolitical site that actually looks at all the issues and looks at foreign policy, what's happening in the world through just a geopolitical prism that has no left or right to it. The other one that I like, and I just went out of my head, that I was going to tell you about, and see what happens. My Medicare is running out on me now, so I can't remember now. I can't remember what it is now.
You know, it's interesting.
But for the most part, I would say those are the ones that I will go to. Does that mean I just follow them? No, I'll find other stories that are worthwhile. I know it's a think tank, and it has a moderate to a left-leaning bias, and it's called Third Way, and it's thirdway.org. And it's not too bad. I'd like to do that and weigh it up against some of the other right-wing think tanks like Cato and Heritage, just to kind of get some different perspective there. And it's for me, it's fun to kind of see where all the different perspectives are, and where they line up, and every now and then they kind of match.
That's cool. There was recently published a list. Basically, it's like the bias chart, and it has the left and the right. I'm going to post it. You're not going to be able to see it, but I want people out there to just kind of see where it is and what it is. And you have, like, on the extreme left, they're listing things like NPR, MSNBC, TPM. I'm looking at the ones that I can actually read because the print is rather teeny. On the other side, they have OAN, which is online or something, American News, WND, Town Hall, Daily Caller. Right in the middle, they have C-SPAN and Wall Street Journal and The Economist, actually. And so those are some good sources. that you've mentioned because they seem to be viable in terms of this little bit of research that was done as well.
I've always been a big fan of the Wall Street Journal, so I enjoy their reporting, and then I also enjoy their editorial page, which to me really leans hard right a majority of the time, but it gives a nice balance, I think, to some of the other, not only the other publications, but also some of the other reporting as well. One of the things that I've always said to people is that there will be an unconscious liberal bias in the media. And the reason why it has to be is because if you're trying to reach a broad audience, you're going to kind of spread it around as far as perspective, and you're going to try to talk to somebody who maybe has a 12-year-old mentality to try to meet them. They aren't necessarily going to be conservative and smart and wealthy. And so there is a unconscious liberal bias that does seep into the media, and it's there. It's always going to be. It's like in the military. If you're in the military and you're a liberal, you're probably not going to be in the military very long. The military's got a little bit of a conservative one. They have to follow orders. They have to make sure that they're there. So it's kind of, there is a built-in bias for the media, and you have to. It is acceptable. Does that mean that everybody has to go screaming to the left? No, it doesn't mean that at all.
It's interesting that my son and most of my family are very liberal. They're not conservative. Mm-hmm. Myself, my wife, my folks, that's about it. But when I talk to my son or my daughter, they're basically on the Democratic camp. Sometimes I don't understand why, but sometimes I do. I asked my son, I said, why do you lean this way? And he said that he feels the government is always going to be the government, and he's more concerned in social issues that help people. And he feels that the Democratic Party is the party that is more responsive to that need. And I understand that, and that's fine. But some other relatives, if I talk to, it just becomes a screaming match. As soon as I say, I shouldn't say as soon as I say, I can't say anything. I can't even start it off. Net neutrality. I talked to my sister-in-law, who is way on the left, and her son. And the world is going to come to an end. Everything's going to end. You're for that, aren't you? And my response, I didn't know the law, but my answer is, if it means the government will control something, I hate it. I don't want it, because they can't mail a letter without losing money. They can't do anything. The problem with the government always is the government itself, and the problem never solves the problem. Has to be from somewhere else.
Well, and to me, there's a lot of truth to that. But I also think that too much of the government is being run by special interests who control who gets into office. They control who the lobbyists are, and then those lobbyists go in and they write the laws, and they write the laws for a lot of the corporate interests. So I'm beginning to see at certain times where I do think the government is gotten a little bit more in bed with the corporate folks, the ones who merge to get rid of jobs, the ones who write the laws so it's in favor of them. So I've got a little bit. I understand where you're coming from, but I also see what's been going on a lot in the politics and in the money that's going on there. We've created 3 industries that we've weaponized them to be great money makers, but don't help anybody. The first one's politics, the second one's the media, and the third one's healthcare. And as a result we've all turned them into Wall Street type of businesses. I mean, if you win election in Congress, you become a multimillionaire. They're not paying you $1 million there, but you eventually become a multimillionaire. There's very few people who walk out of Congress or walk out of the Senate not making a ton of money after they've served there.
My last count was there was only one senator who was making less than $1 million. It was worth less than $1 million. I don't remember who it was about $750,000. But you have to ask yourself, how does Nancy Pelosi, for a lifetime of helping the public, wind up owning or have assets like near $40 million? Same thing with Harry Reid, who was even more ridiculous.
Harry Reid was the same way in Nevada. Yeah, I was in Nevada, and it was like, Harry, I mean, you got compounds over here, and you were a senator. I mean, how does that happen?
Yeah, well, it happens from insider trading, which is also interesting. This is another reason I trust the government as I do. They passed the Stock Act. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically, let's see if I can remember. It's like stop trading on congressional knowledge. It was a law that was passed because, for instance, Harry Reid would know that they're negotiating for a new naval base somewhere. So he would, or one of his corporations would buy all of the potential land around it. And then when it would come through, he would sell his land to the government. Okay? Something which if you did or I did or, you'd be in jail.
Absolutely.
So they passed this law which is supposed to limit that. And then in a midnight session kind of got rid of most of it. So I understand what you mean. I mean, I was surprised because I saw Trump with his, I think it was the cabinet or a bunch of senators. I think it was a bunch of senators. And they were talking about the NRA. And Trump said, hey, look, I like the NRA, but I don't have to agree with everything. Says I can go ahead and tell, no, I don't like this. We should do that. But then he pointed at everyone else. He says, but you guys are stuck, aren't you? He says, you guys need their money and want their money. He says, you can't disagree with them. And to me, it was kind of funny and astute in a way because that's how it is. So I think we would agree, both of us, that if we can get rid of the profit motive in government, it would run in a much smoother fashion.
I would agree. There's too many people. I one of the couple that I looked at was Carville and Matlin. I think they're evil personified as far as what they do. They're taking from both sides. They're making millions of dollars, and it's why do you need to make millions of dollars to get somebody elected? I mean, for the most part, I'm seeing all these ads now for Kavanaugh. Trying to get people to push their senator to vote for him. It's like there's money being put into a campaign for a Supreme Court justice. It's like, do we really need? Can't we just find out?
Yeah. The word you're searching for is stupid. But
yeah. I mean, it doesn't make sense, and we do it in the media too. I mean, it used to be when I first got into the media, and of course, that was like the early 1980s or so. Television news just started to be a profit center. Before it was just kind of, if you're a broadcaster, you just did it as a public service. All of a sudden they began to realize in the late 70s, early 80s, wow, we can make a lot of money off this. And that's when they started doing that. And then when you look at healthcare now, I mean, healthcare is just weaponized by Wall Street, and that's why we have the runaway stupid healthcare cost, and we're not getting the results that we would normally get. So I think those three should be turned into nonprofit industries, and we would be much better off.
So that'd be healthcare,
the media, and government.
Media
and government and politics.
Government. Boy, oh boy. You see, I know that politically you're way different than I am, but we can have a sensible conversation.
Well, I think you probably, since you came from being a Democrat, you probably hold on to a couple of principles. I'm steeped into both. I had a mother who was very liberal and a father who was very conservative. Marriage didn't last very long, but for the most part, I've taken a lot of different things. So I have friends on the far left, friends on the far right, and when I end up talking to them, some of them think I'm a wackadoodle from the other side. Wow. And I'm just like, no. So I love discourse, and I love hearing where other people are coming from. And for the most part, I'm fortunate enough that I've read enough that I know where someone's coming from. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to call bullshit on somebody if they're coming out with something that's like, you're really not backing it up with facts. But at the same time, too, there's a lot on both sides that can be attributable, and that also makes sense. And we're also going through, they talk about the pendulum. So we're beginning to see, things are shifting. I think they've gone very conservative, and I think they're, despite the Obama years, the rest of the Congress and a lot of the country went quite conservative, and I think it's still swinging conservative, and I think it's about ready to swing back the other way. That's why I think we're going to see. I don't know if this November is going to be it, 2020 is definitely going to be a shift, and I think it's, our ideas are changing, and we seem to fall in love more with the left. We seem to fall in love more with the right, and at the same time too, we're just going through massive upheaval as far as the economy and technology are going. So we're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
but we can all agree on stuff too. So
that's it. There's always something to agree on, unless you're so staunch in your position. It's like if someone says, "Look, this country must have open borders, and everyone who comes in here illegally is entitled to everything and should be an American citizen." If you stick to that, I have nowhere to negotiate with you. My answer is no.
And I would say the majority of people, even on the left, don't think that. So I think that's another one of the issues. Abortion and immigration to me are the great.
I think if the left got into power tomorrow, there would be amnesty for everybody.
If you had the far left, you would probably see a lot of that. Yes.
Well, the far left is what the Democratic Party is right now. Just ask Tom Perez, the new face of the Democrat. Is a socialist. So I don't know. You can get a little bit more left of that. But I don't want to see the country become left of Lenin. It's got to be, like you said, there is a pendulum.
Yeah, I still think you're going to see some moderation there, just as I think you're going to see some moderation on the far right side with the Republican Party. I think it's eventually going to be coming back to that. But
who is the middle of the road Democrat? Who do you know of in the Democratic side that's middle of the road?
Well,
I can mention a bunch of Republicans,
but you're right. They're kind of moving out, and we are losing a lot of the middle.
Mm-hmm. And who really? What's weird to me is that a lot of the middle of the road Republicans can't admit that anymore. Mm-hmm. I think a guy like Chuck Schumer, who knows Trump for a long time, he's out of New York. He knows, I think, in his heart of hearts that if he needed to, he could sit down with this guy. If he cut out all the political bullshit, that they could work and get stuff done. But he dare not do that. Nothing Trump does can be okay or good. It's like Wall Street went nuts because of the trade agreement with Mexico yesterday. Unbelievable. Our economy is like stronger than it's ever been. If people in media were normal, that would be the news, because that's the news. That's what's going on. Yeah. So what does CNN report about that? It's a failure. You see, it didn't. The agreement didn't mention any money from Mexico to pay for the wall. So Trump's a failure, and that's the nitpicking little ankle-biting, yapping thing that they decide that's what's important to broadcast. I think that if Trump came up with a cure for cancer, the news would say that thousands of doctors are now unemployed.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, because that is actually what Wall Street has done with healthcare. Is they've actually turned down cures. Elizabeth Rosenthal wrote a book called American Sickness, and she has some documented evidence of possible cures for diabetes, and they refuse to fund it because they realize that a cure doesn't bring in the profits that a lifetime of treatment does.
Sure. I mean, the physician...
So you are seeing that.
Yeah. The physician that proved that ulcers are caused by bacteria almost lost his medical license. They wanted it to be stress, and they wanted it to be acid in your stomach. And he said, no. You have anyone with the worst type of ulcer, give them these two medications, and they'll be fine in 2 weeks. He almost lost his license for coming up with a cure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I just, on my radio show, I just talked with a guy who talked about natroxen, and a low dose natroxen can control Crohn's disease better than anything else, and nobody will pay attention to it because they want to. And natroxen costs $20 a month.
Very cheap drug
for a full month. And it controls Crohn's.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Studies show it, but instead they wanted to give you all these other big medicines that are far more expensive.
Sure.
But if you look at issues like, for instance, to me the immigration issue is one of the great goofy things when you look at the Democrats and the Republicans. The Democrats, let's bring in all these immigrants, so they're going to vote Democrat. But you know what? There was a lot of Republican business owners who were like, yeah, let's bring them in.
No doubt.
It's going to keep my costs down.
No doubt.
And it's just it's amazing when you look at, if you just look at the profit motive, and you go back to what you were saying about Trump and Schumer. it's profit. They've got to worry about profits. Probably Trump not so much, but Schumer's got to worry about, okay, who's going to be putting money into not only his campaign, but also the Senate campaign. So they got to be careful of that. And, you look at, Christian Gillibrand. I mean, she used to be a moderate. She's not anymore. I mean, she's really jumped on that Me Too movement. And so you start seeing them change. And I think a lot of it goes to either getting more power, that they're going to get up higher into office or certainly within the Senate, or it's the money that they're going to raise.
It's a shame, because I used to think that the populace of the United States, we the people, was at least number 5 or 6 on the list of concerns for our government. Now I feel we're not at all. We're an unfortunate beast that has to elect us. And as crazy as it might sound,
well, I blame a lot of Americans for that too, because we've bought into this entertainment media bias, and we have absolutely allowed it to happen. So we've jumped on board screaming and yelling for one side or the other, if I can go back to my original thing about the entertainment bias. And we're not paying attention to the real issues that are affecting us. And at some point we're going to get hit with, oh my God, the budget's being swamped because of Medicare, because we've got to pay for a lot of old farts like me. We're also going to have some cyber attack at some point that's going to possibly take down the electrical grid in this country.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about that the other day.
Into that.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that we should be concerned with, but I guess if there's no profit motive behind it, it's not a major concern for any of the politicians out there.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. I've had a lot of fun. It's been a pleasure speaking. Let everyone know again, if they want to get in touch with you or want to follow you, how they would go ahead and do it.
Well, my different news stuff, you can follow me on Facebook. It's Informed, Not Inflamed. So it's facebook.com/Informed, Not Inflamed. That would be on Facebook. And then on Twitter, it's John Daly News. So you can follow my Twitter site. I will not follow you back unless you're a news organization. So, but it's something you can take a look at. And you can see the different news sources that I use and I follow. My TV show is Undercover Jet Setter. The best way to do it is to go and subscribe on YouTube. It's free. So it's youtube.com/undercoverjetsetter. And our website is undercoverjetsetter.com. So we have recipes, we have blogs, we have different wine suggestions and stuff like that. So if you're heading out for a party, we can tell you what are the wines you need. And we just did this whole thing on our radio show. 4 great wines for under $10 that you can, 2 reds and 2 whites that you can enjoy. So there's a lot of stuff there, and so it's it's a lot of fun. So I get to do the media bias, media analysis stuff, and then I get to do also what I also love, and that's the travel, food, wine, and golf.
Awesome. Great conversation. We could go on at length about all sorts of stuff, I feel. If you ever want to be a co-host with me or come on the show more often, let me know. It gets lonely doing an hour and a half monologue. So.
I would absolutely love to. Anytime you're in a pinch and you need somebody, if I'm around, I can blab on forever. And as long as I got you to blab to and listen to, that'd be perfect.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you for joining us this evening, folks. You've been listening to the Michael Blum Show, and you've been listening to John Daly. Again, John is an author. You should go check out his books. He has his new one is called Not Informed, Not Inflamed. And also he has No BS Guide to Navigating the Media Biased World. Again, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. Like I said, I had a lot of fun, and I hope everyone out there that listens to the broadcast also is having a lot of fun. As I say in just about every show, that basically everything in your life is possible. Fewer things are probable, that's for sure. But one thing that is true is that you are alive. And if you are alive, go out and experience life, because tomorrow is promised to nobody. And you take care, and we will speak to you next time on The Michael Blum Show.